My name is Dimitri Legis. I'm a junior in Columbia College studying computer science, and I was a member of the Spring 2017 Columbia University in Slavery course. I was investigating the core curriculum, more specifically Contemporary Civilization, which was actually the first core curriculum class. We're approaching the centennial of this course. It was founded in 1919. I was asking questions about its foundation, what led to its creation, and trying to understand the differences between today's course and the course as it was founded. Studying the core was easy in some ways. There's a book written about the core by Timothy Cross. It's called An Oasis of Order. So a really great starting place for me was to read this book, try to understand the official Columbia narrative about the core curriculum, what it tries to convey, how it was founded, and then start asking questions that would maybe complicate this narrative or add to it. He had a massive source list, which was really helpful. Took me to the rare books and manuscript library, and I was able to look at the central files, the files of the professors that started Contemporary Civilization, the trustees' files, and was sort of just able to go from there. It was a tremendous starting place for me. One of our first assignments was to watch a taping of a 2014 talk given by Craig Wilder at Low Rotunda about the legacy of slavery in American universities. At the end of the talk, someone asked a question about the core curriculum and if Columbia had any plans to make changes to the curriculum. And I think this is a question that gets asked a lot. We go to an institution that in many ways is defined by this curriculum, and it's great in that it teaches students how to be critical, but that critical lens can be turned back onto the core itself. And a lot of people ask about Columbia's history as a space meant for white people, perhaps white men in particular. And so I became interested in trying to understand the context and the climate in which this curriculum was founded. One of the things that's immediately interesting about Contemporary Civilization as it was taught almost 100 years ago is that it looks a lot different than today's Contemporary Civilization course. Today, sophomores take CC, and it starts in classical antiquity and goes basically into today. So it's a brief overview of 2,000 years of philosophy. In 1919, students studied only the preceding 50 years, and it was a class that emphasized political economy way more than philosophy. The goal of the course was to build young men ready for industry, young capitalists, people who could go out and successfully run businesses and be politicians in this new world. And it was a new world defined by the end of World War I. I found that World War I and the social and political changes that it brought were crucial to the creation of CC. When the war ended, many people at Columbia felt that a peace issues course was needed to address the issues that would come at the end of the war. At Columbia, many of these issues could be formulated as a threat to the white Christian hegemony. Columbia is an Episcopal school built by an Episcopal church next to an Episcopal hospital. One of the people instrumental in delivering war issues to SATC students was Colonel John Koss. A professor of philosophy at Columbia, he would become the first director of Contemporary Civilization. The curriculum that Colonel Koss designed bore a striking resemblance to the war issues course in its discussion of political economy, but it shifted the focus to America. But the social changes surrounding World War I think, contributed just as much to the founding of the course. Columbia actually dealt with some problems with its student body in the years leading up to World War I. Many of its traditional students, wealthy New York Protestant elites, began attending other schools like Harvard, Princeton, Yale. The problem was they were going off to boarding schools and wanted to stay with their peers and didn't want to come back and go to Columbia. As a result, more and more international and Jewish students began attending Columbia, something that frightened the administration. President Nicholas Murray Butler commented in 1917 that the class was much too foreign-born, and by 1919, Columbia was explicitly limiting the number of Jewish students that could attend. In the preceding years, Columbia had built St. Paul's Chapel, And trustee John B. Pine hoped that it would turn the tide of students who were moving away from the church. And this was a comment directly toward the influx of Jewish students. And so I think it's really easy to see and understand the core curriculum as sort of a response to the changing student body. So some of the questions I think that could be asked about the core curriculum or contemporary civilization going forward are, as the student body continued to change, as new political challenges arose, as higher education in America changed, how did the core curriculum, how did contemporary civilization change? How did it become what it became today? Does it still hold the same purpose of preparing Columbia students to engage in American industry? Is it still preparing us to be the next businessmen and women, the next industrialists, or has its purpose changed? I think those are the questions going forward.